Hey witches, Witch Willow is back with another Friday video. And I am wearing my witch hat. How you like it? Glamming up the witch bit. So today we are going to be talking about witches. And not only is it's not really a mythical creature, witches do exist, but it is in the Halloween series line that I'm doing here, and it is the subject that I am the most knowledgeable about because, number one, I am a witch, number two, I was trained in Salem, and I actually have, and I believe I said this in another video, that I have two of the ladies here that were caught up in the Salem witch trials. Now, it depends on what part of the world you live in, that kind of controls your concept of witches. Now, if you live in like the UK, you have the Smithfield burnings, you have the Enfield trials, so you have those types of memories to draw on. Well, I shouldn't say memories, but that information. Now, if you're an American, the first thing that pops into your mind is the Salem witch hysteria of 1692. And some people tend to forget that while there were 19 deaths from that, hundreds and hundreds of people were accused. Not just in Salem. I mean, they were taking the girls out to Danvers, to Beverly, to Winthrop. They took them as far as out of state, which, although at that time it was kind of, the state lines were convoluted. New Hampshire was still kind of considered part of Massachusetts. So there were a lot of accusations all up and down the northeastern seaboard. Hundreds were put in jail and accused. Some actually died in jail that weren't really considered part of the victims of it. In India, they believe, I'm sorry, in Africa, they believe that witches steal your soul. I believe it's in Russia. I believe that they, and I may be wrong. It's just, I've read so many different things and about different countries. I may be mixing them up. That witches can transform you into something else. Let's just get to the bottom of it. Witches aren't going to transform you into a mouse or a toad or an aardvark. That is not within their capabilities. Can witches kill you? Yeah. The same way that anybody else can kill you. Poison, stabbing, shooting, strangling, suffocating. They don't have any powers themselves to take your life. Now, if they do have power over the supernatural, things like shadow people and demons, they can order those types of entities to take your life. But they themselves are not going to do it. They're not going to lure children into an oven. I mean, witches are just everyday people. Now, can anybody be a witch? I think I've already addressed this, but I'm going to say it again. No, not everybody can be a witch. It boils down to what is called the will of the witch. Now, let me explain something about the world we live in. Not the universe, but the world we live in. Now, my spirit guide has explained it to me like this. He calls it the esosphere. And he said, surrounding our planet is this layer of energy called the esosphere. And he says that anything, well, I should say anybody living or dead, is connected, almost like an invisible energy umbilical cord, to this esosphere. So as long as you're still on this plane, even if you've passed, he's able to track you down using the esosphere. Now, if you crossed over, it snaps, you're not connected to the esosphere anymore. So if you're in heaven or you're in hell, you are not connected to the esosphere anymore, and it would be very hard to track you. It would be very hard to summon you. So I'm not getting off topic. The esosphere is the reason why I'm bringing the esosphere up, is because it is energy that surrounds the entire planet. And being a witch, in some way or form, you are able to tap into that energy. So, and the level that you are able to tap into that energy is really how strong of a witch you're going to be. Now, there are different types of witches out there. Just like there are different doctorate degrees. Your podiatrist cannot do open heart surgery, just as a brain surgeon isn't going to be looking for embolisms in your leg. So there are different witches, such as what I call herbological witches. They are the ones that have the knowledge of the herbs, trees. They know which, I mean, they just have like an encyclopedic knowledge of what herbs can heal, what herbs can kill, what herbs you can use to reduce a fever, what you would use to fight an infection. So they're basically like homeopathic witches. But they also have the added benefit that they grow. I mean, their gardens are beautiful. They can grow anything. They can take a plant that's almost dead and make it into a bush. How do they do that? Whether they know it or not, they are actually using the energy. And they feed and they grow. And you may think, oh, well, you know, they're just feeding, they're growing, they're putting in the right light and whatever. But they have that energy in them. And it just kind of flows out of them. And that's why some people can just do, you know, beautiful, like grow orchids. Like I struggle with orchids. I have beautiful orchids. I buy them and they're beautiful. And I do everything by the book and they die. Yet I can grow vegetables perfectly. I can't grow herbs. I can't grow orchids. But tropical flowers and vegetables are fine with me. Even though I'm following the book, I'm doing everything, it's just the way it is. There are certain witches that, I guess you could say they're like love witches. Almost like matchmakers. They can sense, you know, certain, and then, of course, that can also lead into, like, the empathic witches that not only do they know how to read a person's emotions or auras, but their energy can meld with yours and soothe it. Like, if you're in a state of turmoil and your aura may be brown, grayish, very muddied, they can actually use their aura to reach out and soothe yours. Bring your aura right back up to the lines that it should be. And then they withdraw. You know, sometimes they have to withdraw all your junk with them. And they suffer for it. But that is what some other witches can do. I'm not exactly sure what I mean, some people might call them like Reiki masters, but that is a different type of witch. Now, there's another type of witch which I fall into that category, called the necromantic witch. Now, some people may say the necromantic witch is just the laziest witch of all, because we have the souls of the dead they go out and they manifest our spells for us. They enact things for us. So yes, it may seem like we are the laziest witches on the planet because we're not doing anything for ourselves. But that's not true. Because the trickier something is that you want, like say there's this huge storm coming and you want to protect your home. You want to keep the damage to a minimum. And you're kind of in the path of the storm. If your spirits are willing to do it, to give you like this protective shield, they only have a certain amount of energy. So what do you have to do? You have to be able to tap into that ecosphere. You have to draw down all the energy that you possibly can and then energize all your spirits to kind of juice them up and help them to act as a deflector. And that can be extremely exhausting because you are extending your own aura up to touch this and draw that energy down. And then you feel the energy, you're buzzing with it, and then you have to give it all out. And it also takes your energy with it. It's extremely exhausting. So anytime a necromantic witch actually does their magic, it's exhausting for them. It literally takes a piece of them. So for, anybody to say a necromantic witch is like the laziest witch of all, it may seem that way, but it's not. It's one of the hardest witches to be. Because it means you've reached a level where you can actively seek out that power and draw it to you. And then dish it out where it needs to go. Now, also, your necromantic witches, some of the psychic witches fall into this category as well, but your necromantic witches are your ghostbusters. Some of us can open portals and have spirits cross over. And if they don't want to, there are different ways that we can deal with them. We can either force them to go. We can trap them so that they are, and this is if they are causing problems. If they refuse to leave, if they've been causing problems enough that the owner's like, I can't deal with this anymore, I need this spirit out of my house. That is what a necromantic witch can actually do. We can forcibly remove the spirit if it doesn't want to go. We can actually trap the spirit if it doesn't want to go. We can use the ecosphere to clear your house. Now, a lot of people, they have to use the sage and they have to, go through the whole house and sage the house and everything. I've never had to do that with my house. And I think I've mentioned this before. One of my tools is my antheme. It is the tool I grab the most, especially for all my work with spirits. This is always with me. I even have, in my car, in case I need it, I have this little dragon pendant, and the tongue that sticks out of the dragon, it pulls out, and it's a little dagger, a little tiny dagger, and it is actually sharp. And if I need it, if I'm in my car and I need it for something, I have that mini antheme right there. So the antheme is what I use, and what a lot of, I won't say all of them because everybody has their own style, but a lot of necromantic witches will use the dagger, because a dagger, when it's unsheathed, usually means somebody's going to die. So when you're dealing with the spirits of the deceased, you need a kind of like a death tool. And this is what I actually use to cut into the ecosphere and drag the power down to me. At some point I may actually do a video on that. I don't know. I'm not too crazy about doing videos of my spell work. I don't know. So there are like a myriad, and stop doing that. I'm waiting for this video to finish saving so I can, not this video, this other video I'm doing. So, there are just like a myriad of different, pardon me, and just as, you know, the pantheon that you choose to, I guess, worship, also dictates kind of what you do and how you carry on. Now, when I say not everybody can be a witch, let me put it this way, for anybody that's like of the Christian, anybody that's kind of like of the Christian, not necessarily Catholic, but Christian, everybody can go to church, but not everybody can be a saint. Kind of the same way. It doesn't mean that you can't observe the solstices, Yule, Samhain, which is actually, it looks like it's spelled Samhain. It's actually pronounced Samhain, and of course that is All Hallows Eve. It does not mean that you can't observe the rituals, that you can't go through the motions. In fact, that would actually help you get closer. And it may actually, you know, the repetitive, and it may actually help you focus more and get you to a place where you do have a little, you're able to tap into that power. It doesn't mean that you will be a very strong witch, but eventually, yeah, you could probably get to that. And for those that don't have the natural aptitude to be a witch, those are the ones that would do well to seek out a coven, because everybody focusing their energy all together on something to manifest is a huge boon to those who really don't kind of have the power of themselves and can't tap into the esosphere. So I don't mean to discourage anybody on that path, especially if they were thinking about that path. I'm just saying that if you really kind of are born a witch, you really kind of are. You can develop some abilities by going through the motions and the practices and such. But you really have to be born with the aptitude for it already, you know, in place. And I will say that the older that a spirit is, the more inclined that they're going to be able to tap into these powers. Just because you've reincarnated so many times, your soul just naturally knows about this. It's like ingrained in you. You know it. It's just hard to sometimes unlock it once you incarnate into this life, to remember what your soul knows. Now, I did mention that I have 2 of the victims of the Salem witch hysteria. I have Bridget Bishop and I have Sarah Good. Now, they have chosen to come to me and remain with me because I do put certain spells around my apartment. I do put certain spells around my dolls that can't be yanked away to answer questions. They can't be summoned on a Ouija board. And they appreciate that fact. And I'm going to say that, and this goes with, I actually have quite a few famous and infamous spirits here that are thankful for the sanctuary. They don't have to be called upon anymore. And this is why, and this is something that you really need to think of. And I know human curiosity is always going to be, you know, like prevalent. You always want answers and everything. But I just want you to think about this, because these people are human beings. And you have to remember that they still have feelings. They still have emotions. If you lived your entire life and you had so many fascinating things happen to you, and maybe you were a woman that for your time was a trailblazer, or you were singled out because of, you know, things that we take for granted today, like women owning their own businesses, owning their own homes, dressing in red, you know, God forbid. This is what set Bridget Bishop apart from Puritan Salem. She was very much a determined woman, and she was a woman who knew her own mind and knew her own worth. She didn't need a man in her life. She married 3 times, and she married for love. She did not marry for money. She didn't need to marry for money. She owned her own tavern. She had her own apple orchard. She was a woman of her own means. But she didn't dress in brown or black. She liked red. All 3 of her husbands died. And she was a woman who spoke her mind and was not afraid to speak her mind. And this singled her out as a witch. Now, a woman like that today, we wouldn't even think twice. We wouldn't call her a witch. We call her successful, you know. But in the 1600s, it was very much a man's world, and a woman was to sit there and be silent and defer to the man. So when Bridget wouldn't do that, she was one of the first ones to come under suspicion. So you've lived your whole life. You were an entrepreneur. You know, you had 3 husbands, and you had children, and you had a business, and you had a life. And yet the only thing anybody ever wants to ask you about is the worst moments of your life. The most tragic and terrifying days that you lived through. And that's all anybody wants to ask you. They don't want to ask you about your children. They don't want to ask you about what it was like to own a business back then. They don't want to ask you about your feelings, except the terror and the horror that you felt in the last few days of your life. How would you like that? And to be asked over and over and over again for centuries. I mean, will it never end? I mean, that was, you know, that's her thing. Will it never end? One of the things that she said that she wants to be known as is that she was a good wife. She was a good woman. She took pride in her business, and she took pride in herself. That was the thing that she wanted to express the most. So, you know, when you're doing seances and when you're summoning, and, you know, of course, the names that come to mind are going to be of famous people. Think about how you would feel if you had died in like a horrible way, and people ask you to relive it again and again and again. If you really want to talk to a spirit, talk to them. Ask them, first of all, how they're doing. Ask them if they want to talk about that. If they don't want to talk about it, don't make them talk about that. That's horrible. Ask them about their life. Ask them about the happiest thing that they remember. Ask them about who they love the most. Just remember how you would feel if it were you. And I know I kind of got off topic of witches, but Bridget was not a witch. She wants to make that known. She was not a witch. She was basically killed because she was an outspoken woman that didn't need a man. And in Puritan New England, that was not acceptable to the men. Sarah Good wants everybody to know that she was a woman that was abandoned. Her husband was useless. She was left with a child. And she relied on a lot of charity from her neighbors. They used to call her a beggar woman. And she was basically a burden to Salem. But she was a burden to Salem because Salem didn't make her husband act like a man. If you really want to, you know, live in a small community, if you don't want to have a charity case, and shame somebody into taking up their responsibilities. But they didn't. He was drinking. He was wasting his money. And she had a child, a 4-year-old daughter. And because she was a drain on their society, she was bitter about it too. She was angry. She was angry because she couldn't get out of it. She didn't want to marry him in the first place. She ended up having to marry him, and then she was saddled in this way with a man. And no one was helping her. There was no one to help her. And so she was accused as a witch. She was killed. And Sarah wants people to understand who she was and exactly why she was killed. And that's horrible. It's just, you know, she wasn't a witch. And to make matters worse, they accused her 4-year-old daughter and threw her in as well. They threw her in the prison. And let me tell you something about the Salem jail. Salem jail was close to the water. They had tiny little cells. They had so many people in those cells, no one could sit down. There were no beds. They had pots to piss and shit in. Just like buckets. That's it. You had to pay for your food. And if you couldn't pay for your food, you had to pay for your food. You had to pay for your shackles. And if you couldn't pay for it, then you went hungry. And not only that, but it was close to the water. The dungeon, it was because the Salem jail, it wasn't above ground. They placed you underground, so there's no light. None. You're standing room only. I mean, you can't sit down. You have to stand. There is no room to sit because there are so many people in there. And at night, the cells would flood up to your waist. So you're standing in water where the waste bucket has tipped and there's piss and shit. And they had a 4-year-old child in this environment. And Dorcas was never the same after that. And Sarah's angry about that. She's mad. She's very mad. I can feel her right now. She's so emotional that her daughter, because her daughter was never, the reports are her daughter was never right in the head afterwards because of everything that she went through there. And that upsets Sarah so much. Because it's ridiculous that a 4-year-old is a witch. But, I guess I get a little off topic. But, I want you to keep in mind, if you do seances coming, with Halloween coming up, think about how you would feel before you ask the questions that you're going to ask. Think about the spirit's situation and their feelings, because they are still human spirits. If you are thinking about pursuing witchcraft, I absolutely stress that you do some research. Witchvox.com is a great place to go, an outlet to reach out to other witches, find covens in your area. A lot of people will let you watch, you know, their covens. See if that's something for you. Being a solitary witch, if you're not able to tap into certain powers, if you're not able to, you know, control. Reading is, you know what, reading is fine. But if you don't have some preliminary training, you could really screw some shit up. I mean, I had training and I screwed some shit up big time. Just, whoa. And I gave up witchcraft for a long time. But if it's something that you're really interested in, I really start, like, the books. If you go back to my video, Getting Started in Witchcraft, I urge you to look at that. Look at some of the books that I've recommended. Definitely go on witchfox.com. And then, of course, you can always ask me any questions if you want to keep it private. My email is salemwillow@yahoo.com. So that is it for the witches video. Now, next Friday is this witch's birthday. So there will not be a Friday video. I was thinking I might do it on Thursday, but I might kind of be tied up because I've got the St. Augustine trip on Tuesday. Wednesday, I need to kind of recover. So in lieu of doing like a live segment video, what I might just do on Thursday is edit down the St. Augustine video and post that for the Friday video. So there may not be like a live series video, Halloween, that I'm doing next Friday because Friday's my birthday and I'm actually going to do something. So, the week after that, well, that Halloween comes up before then. I'm still looking for ideas of what you guys want for Halloween. So please, you know, put it in the comment box below or shoot me an email of something that you would like to see done for Halloween. Not necessarily a seance, because I kind of do like the, you know, the interview videos here. So I kind of do like the seances anyway. But, you know, if you want to see a spell, if you want to see how certain thing is made, if you want to see how to set up your altar correctly, you know, just let me know what you would like to see for the Halloween video. And I will, I guess I will see you on Halloween. Bye, witches.